Okay, so we got our little hello world script. Let's create a new script. So I'll close the hello world script, create a new script, and I'm going to call this one lab 1. Which is probably what you'll call yours. And what this was going to demonstrate is basic I/O and loops that you need for Lab 1 in PowerShell. So first, we will see how you can do some basic I/O. So let's. It's very similar to Bash. I can say dollar name is a variable that we'll use, and we'll assign it. We'll use read host command. So we're reading input from the host machine. In this case, it'll be the default I/O, which is the keyboard. And our prompt is going to be enter your name. And then whatever the user types at that point, we'll go into that variable called $name, and then we'll be able to say write host your name is, and $name, and back quote, which is up above the tab key, and N, and that's going to be a carriage return. Alright, that looks pretty good. Control S to save that, F5 to run that, and now at the bottom it's giving me a prompt, enter your name. So I'll type in Mike and press enter, and it says your name is Mike. That's a good start. We can use this little squeegee to clear off the console pane so we can do some more work in here. Okay, so then the next thing is we'll do so counting up, counting down is crazy easy in PowerShell. So while in Bash we have to tell it everything that we want, PowerShell does its best to figure out what we want and make it easy. So I can say 5.1, and that will Control S, F5. Oh, enter your name again, Mike. Oh, M-I-K. And then it executed this 5.1, which is a countdown loop. So this is similar to our range 0, 5 in Bash, except we're specifying a range 5.1 with that dot notation, and it gives us a range of numbers. So we can use that to do to drive loops. Let's write a little loop. Let's do a simple for loop. So this for loop in PowerShell is similar to the for loop in Bash, but is more explicit in what you need to do. You start with $a, for example, as a variable, and it can be anything. And we'll initialize it to 5, and then semicolon. So for separating the commands within the for loop startup. So $a equal 5, we're initializing a variable. And then while $a is greater than 0, $a minus minus, and open bracket to start the loop. Press enter, and I will close the bracket to end the loop right off the bat so I don't forget. Notice how in this integrated scripting environment it understands here's a for loop and this is the beginning of it with the curly brace opening curly brace, and this is the end with the closing curly brace, and it shows you. So that may help some of you. The syntax for PowerShell is a little more traditional, and it's not depending as much on tabs as you may have experienced in a language like Python. That can be confusing. Okay, so I'm just going to print $A by just saying $A, and I'm going to sleep a second. And then this for loop will just count down from 5 to 1. And so again, the setup for this for loop: initialize the variable, repeat as long as this is true, $A greater than 0, and at the end of each turn, reduce $A by 1. Control S, F5. Now it's counting down to 1, and then it is no longer true that $A is greater than 0, so it ends. Okay, so that's the for loop structure. The while loop structure works identically, but just uses a while structure instead of a for structure. So let's code that up. I'll delete that for loop, and I will initialize same steps. $A is initialized to 5, and I start a while loop. Oops, let me do that on a separate line. Start a while loop, and the condition for the while is just like before: $A dash GT for greater than 0. So now I've got my condition, and I open a loop and I close the loop with the braces. But inside the loop, I will print $A, and I will sleep a second, and then at the end of the loop I will $A minus minus, which subtracts 1 from $A. So you'll notice that all 3 elements of the for loop are here in the while loop. I just am using a more manual tool to perform the same functions. I independently initialize the variable to 5. My condition is here in the while loop condition, so as long as the value of $A is greater than 0, this will evaluate to true, and then it will execute the block. The block is the same with $A, printing the content of $A, sleeping a second. What's added is that instead of the end of the for loop saying what you do at the end of each loop, I manually put in what I need to do at the end of each loop, which is reduce $A by 1. So I'll Control S, F5, and this counts down in just the same way, because I'm doing the same things. I'm just the difference between a while loop and a for loop. In this case, pretty much your preference, whichever one is making the most sense to you, because they're doing the same things. The for loop is a little more guidance because it's using those 3 elements right in the setup of the for loop. The while loop lets you use those elements separately. Okay, that's an introduction to basic I/O and basic loops in PowerShell.